Hello everyone and welcome to the Quint-essentials, our chance to talk about our top 5s of anything and everything Warhammer Fantasy Battles. On today's episode you'll be listening to me, the Loremaster, as I talk you through my top 5 Rulebook Magic Standards. Now, this wasn't as easy as I thought it was going to be when I saw it get posted up on our social media pages, but I'm going to dive right in with my number 5 choice, and that's the Banner of Eternal Flame. This one is 10 points, and models in a unit with the Banner of Eternal Flame have flaming attacks. Now, it's worth pointing out that these won't apply to magic weapons or magic arrows, for example, if you're using wood elves, but what they do apply to is any mundane weapon in the regiment. They also apply to ranged attacks as well, so shooting from bows, crossbows, as long as they're not magical shots. This is a great banner. You've got to think to yourself, how much stuff has regen? And particularly when you pop this onto shooting units, I'm looking at you, Dark Elves with crossbows, the infamous Dark Shards with Flaming Banner. The synergy you can start to build up is incredible. You can strip the regeneration save off of things and then shoot it with larger, more dangerous pieces of artillery like bolt throwers. This is brilliant. Similarly, you can have other types of synergy where you put this banner on perhaps a unit that strikes at initiative order, and then charge them into the same combat as a regiment with great weapons or something that goes last, stripping the regen and allowing then the great weapons to do all of the damage. And for 10 points, it scales up absolutely insanely. You don't feel like you've overspent if you put it on a small unit. But when you get on a large unit, you just feel like you've got so much mileage out of its cost. It's a great banner, and it was hard not to put it higher up the list, but the reason it ended up in 5th is because of those pesky Dragonbane gems. I think if they didn't exist, if you didn't see that sort of prevalence of immunity or 2-up ward save rather to flaming attacks, you would see the Banner of Eternal Flame on every single great weapon infantry unit that can take a magic standard in just about every game of Warhammer you played. I think the only thing that prevents that is the fear that you might get charged by something like a Demon Prince, which has got a 2-up ward save against flaming and just tears your unit up. And that's why it only made the 5th place spot for me. So heading into my 4th place position, it is the Gleaming Pennant. This 5-point wonder is a one-use only banner, but a unit with the Gleaming Pennant can reroll its first failed leadership check. Now, there are a plethora of units in Warhammer that can take a sort of cheaper magic banner, that 25.1, shall we say, that are also quite expensive. Things like Wildwood Rangers, things like Warriors of Chaos. There are also those units that can take a magic standard that are quite expensive that can take up to 50 points. Not that that is a problem for this. I'm looking at Sisters of the Thorn being the one that I use this on the most, and I know many people use this on Executioners if their Dark Elf General is on a Pegasus or something like that and it's going to fly away. And that's because you do not want that one erroneous, very unlucky leadership check to make your very expensive unit run away when they're out of BSB range or miles away from your general. And this banner for 5 points can save you 500 points. It's so good for 5 points. I don't know why it's so cheap. It's amazing for that cost. The only real drawback with this one is that it is specified as the first failed leadership check. So you can't say, well, I'm next to my battle standard bearer at the moment, I'll use that reroll and save this one for later. Not how it works, buddy. Sorry about that. You've got to use it straight away. But for 5 points, can you really complain? Ladies and gentlemen, I don't think you can. So into 3rd place now, and I have gone for the Razor Standard. This one is a 45-point magic banner, and models in a unit with a Razor Standard have the Armour Piercing special rule. So, I know what you're thinking, well, how has this beaten the previous banner? Because the previous banner you just said can save you loads of points. And the reason is just because the Gleaming Pennant has less widespread use, I would suggest, than the Razor Standard. There are a lot of armies that have got a regiment that the Razor Standard will be absolutely fantastic on. And big combat blocks, or medium to big combat blocks, are really the staple of truly competitive 8th edition Warhammer, and adding armour piercing to those units is phenomenal. unlike the Banner of Eternal Flame, that armor piercing will affect magic weapons as well. You cannot sniff at that. An additional -1 to the armor save for some armies as well is absolutely vital. I'm looking at Tomb Kings with their Tomb Guard. They really struggle to get through armor. Strength 5 is about as high as they can place across the army, so this is a huge bump for them. Units like Blackguard that have lots of attacks and rerolls and access to a magic standard, fantastic. This can even work on things like Storm Vermin very well, and I am partial to popping it onto Phoenix Guard, that unit with a small frontage, deep ranks, strength 4 armor piercing, really just chew through over time, and they're so hard to break down with that ward save. The Razor standard really works on these regiments. And let's not even talk about what happens when you put it on Witch Elves, because you start looking at the tiny amount of points you spend. You got to think, if you put it on a unit of say 28 Witch Elves, you're really not paying a lot of points for it. You're going, well, I'm paying less than 2 points a model for the Razor standard. Well, less than 2 points a model to give a unit armor piercing. Actually, it really starts to get silly if you start to think about the points per attack, because that front row is going to dish out 30 plus attacks if they're in the hold, which means you've paid 1.5 points per attack for the front row to be armor piercing, let alone all the guys behind. And if you put spells on, you're supporting attacks. I could go on forever. Great item, really helps. You love to see it. So we're into our top 2, and I've really agonised over these 2, but I've gone in second place just with the banner of Swiftness. We're back to a 15-point magic banner this time. Models in the unit with the banner of Swiftness have +1 to their movement characteristic. I love this banner. Good movement is the lifeblood of competitive Warhammer. Everyone knows I'm quite a competitive player. Don't really make much of a secret of that. So anything that makes me faster, more able to get around my opponent, catch them out, apply pressure, is very much how I like to play the game. And I think for 15 points it's very hard to look past this banner. You can take basic sort of humanoid infantry. I'm looking at skeletons that can take a 25-point magic banner. Brilliant, pop this on them in the Vampire Counts book, that is. I'm looking at Warriors of Chaos that can only take a 25-point magic banner. Probably their only real drawback when you look at the kind of eliteness of the troop, that they've got that missing 50-point banner slot. But this is a great banner for them as well. Suddenly they're movement of elves, both those units, and they can really get across fast. When you start putting it onto high movement units, however, like demonettes, witch elves, it just gets beyond upsetting. Movement 7 demonettes, and I know they're not the best unit you're ever going to play, but movement 6 witches, however, is terrifying. This is a fantastic banner. Again, scales up ludicrously. Adding 1 movement for 15 points to 10 models feels like it's fairly pointed, maybe slightly too expensive sometimes. Adding +1 movement for 15 points to 50 models is wild, and it is one of the things that I think makes this a fantastic item. So before I give you my number 1 slot choice, I'm going to give you an honourable mention, and it's just the one, much to the Chieftain's disgust. It isn't going to be the War Banner, because I just don't think it's worth its points. I'm sorry, it's just too expensive for me. It is none other than the Leechbone Pennant. Now this one is another 15-point magic banner. Models in the unit with the Leechbone Pennant have magic resistance 1. Now this missed out on my top 5, really just because there isn't a huge number of units in Warhammer that have the prerequisites to get this, that have a magic banner slot, and also have a ward save. And that's really where this is going to sing. It's when the unit already has a ward save. So we're looking now at demons. We can't use demons of Khorne because they have magic resistance 1 already. So we're looking at demonettes. We're looking at plague bearers, pink horrors. It's very good on plague drones of Nurgle. Makes them even harder to kill, and they are frustrating to get off the table as it is. Now, Phoenix Guard, what an excellent choice on these guys this is. And even units like Dragon Princes of Kelador that have that sort of 6+ ward save you can bump. It's a great banner, but it's a little situational, and ultimately something had to miss out, and I think it's the right choice that this one has slipped off the pace because of its limited power. I think when you just drop Magic Res 1 onto a unit that doesn't have a ward save, you're just really going to struggle to feel the benefit for doing it. Which leads me to give you my first place choice. I don't know if it'll be a surprise. Maybe. I think competitive heads will probably think it's probably not a surprise, but it might be a surprise for me because it's not an item you see me use very often. But it is none other than the standard of discipline. This 15-point powerhouse is very prevalent in the competitive meta. It's so prevalent that we actually put comp point on it in the Triple Crown Wargaming Grand Tournament composition system. So models in a unit with the standard of discipline have +1 leadership. Now there is a caveat. They cannot use the general's inspiring presence whilst they have this banner. However, the problem with this, of course, is that it doesn't stop you putting the general in the unit. Then they're not using his inspiring presence, they're just using the highest leadership in the unit. And when he gives out his inspiring presence, well, it's done so at the +1 from the standard of discipline, which is where I think there probably never was an intention for that, although they never FAQ'd it. But it is very common. It's very rare that you see a Slam Mage Priest that doesn't have it if their Battle Standard Bearer upgraded. And this is very common in Ogre armies, also Goblin armies. Trying to think they're probably the most common, but Warriors of Chaos armies like this as well. Particularly, it's those expensive units. You just cannot afford a one bad leadership test, that thing that catches you out. So the reason it's my number one is because, well, it has such a huge impact on the game. Not only does it up the leadership of the unit that it's in, but if you put your general in there, as we discussed, it ups the leadership of every unit within range of that inspiring presence. And ultimately, that force multiplier of having lots of units that have benefited from the banner through use of the general in that way, and just in general how powerful leadership can be in terms of when you foul a big one, it can be game changing. We all know that. Means that for me, the standard of discipline had to be the number one choice. And that's it. We've got through my top 5 rulebook magic banners. Please feel free to let me know your thoughts, comments, criticisms, whatever they are, in the comments section below, or drop us a message on any of our social media platforms. And make sure you head back to the Night of the Realm mustering ground, where you can check out all of our other exclusive content.
Remember to tag your friends and like, subscribe and share. Then head over to triplecrownwargaming.com and become a Knight of the Realm today.
What are you doing, mate?
You alright? Do it for Warhammer!